Dr. Gordon was grappling with. We can't just keep expanding prisons and graveyards. One of the other questions that he asked himself came from a verse in Luke 6:40 that the disciples become like the teacher. And if they're blind, they what? Both fall into a ditch. And I'll pose a question to you. If you've heard me ask it before, you have to refrain from responding. Who's leading our youth today? What top 2 influencers are there on young people?
Athletes.
Okay.
Media. Musicians.
Media. You've got number 2 down. Here's number 1. Kids are raising kids. 86% of 8th graders in this country go home to an unsupervised environment. That is not an urban statistic. Children are shaping the values of one another on the streets. Unsupervised, gross amounts of neglect. Peers, children raising children. You said it in several different ways through musicians and athletes and television, arts and media. Powerful value-shaping force. I'm told statistically, and I endeavor to make sure this doesn't happen, that by the time my children are 18, they will have seen 500,000 commercials. Think about that for a second. What are the values that those commercials are dispensing to my children? Television is owned in urban households 76 hours a week. It's not much better in the suburbs. It's 56 hours a week. That is a value-shaping medium. Then throw internet in there. Xbox, Nintendo. Powerful value-shaping force. So as a pastor, he was recognizing this reality. You cannot reach at-risk teenagers and change generational destructive patterns with Sunday schools, youth groups, outreach evangelism, door-to-door, all that stuff, necessary, good. You have to have a child 7 to 9 hours a day just to have a fighting chance. And that's why he started the school. I think of Martez, who I met, I guess it was 1.5 years ago. He came, we did a little Halloween outreach. I love that here. We do it in Fairfield because that's the only time of the year people really feel invited to come to your porch. Met Martez, and he said, I'd like to get in Restoration Academy. One of the things I love about the school is a child can pursue us and find their way in because of our open admissions policy. This kid has no support. Most of his family have records. Single mom, as are 70% of our kids. And I'm sitting there thinking to myself, he came to us as a junior this year. I'm thinking, you know, Martez isn't going to have a chance apart from something like this. I'm sorry, no, a couple hours a week in a church aren't going to get it. The pull of the streets is way too powerful and way too strong for him to even have a fighting chance. So back in 1988, Dr. Gordon opened the educational wing of his church at the time and let kids in, literally let them in, had a handful of people supporting him in 1988. I have this picture up here because what he did reminds me of what Mother Teresa did in Calcutta. She recognized the need for urban education, for education in that part of the world, and the way she started was she reached down in the ground and began to do the alphabet in the sand, and children started coming. And then you have tables and chairs and now some 13 schools. But just starting with what she had, that's what Dr. Gordon did. 69 boys showed up. It was not a gender-specific school. That is who came. Hardcore, at-risk teenagers, many put out of the public school system. Opened the doors, and it's grown over the years. We've got about 160 kids, K-5 through 12, and we're small by design. We will always be that way because the needs are so great. And it's grown over the years, as I've mentioned. I call this our fish and loaves development. I say this because it reminds me that it's always going to be characterized by utter dependence upon the Lord's blessing. In the fishes and the loaves, you've heard the story. Jesus turned to the disciples and said, how many loaves do you have? That was really a silly question. You feed them, he said in one account. Bring what you have. Yes, the need is overwhelming. Yes, your resources are inadequate, but you can be assured of my blessing. And so we've asked ourselves some questions. What can we focus on? The need is so vast, there's so many ways we can tackle it. But what are a few things we can do well? Anybody ever read the book Good to Great? Great read. I would encourage you to read that book. And he studies successful companies that had sustained success, and he extracts these principles. And one of the things that he said is you've got to have something that you could be the best in the world at. And pursue that and focus on that and ask the question, what should we not be focusing on? So we've come up over the years with what I call 4 cultural distinctives that I believe if you're going to have an impact in any kind of a ministry and cause, you're going to have these distinctives in part at least. Our first distinctive, and I've already alluded to this with answering the question, is a culture of incarnation. That is, he dwelled among us. These red balloons represent 9 families, faculty and staff members who live within 2 miles of the school, which is here. People that have said, this is not 8 to 3. This is beyond that. How can we get with the citizens of Fairfield and help revitalize and restore this community? Very important part of this ministry. Just to show you some of the families. The Braddocks and their twin daughters here, beautiful couple, been here for I think 8 years now, live in the community, do Bible studies in their home after school hours. The Mayos, our custodian here, Robert, many of you know him. Great relevant testimony. Grew up in the Woodlawn housing projects on the White Side. And he's coming to work every day. He's modeling what a man does, provides for his family. Just a great part of this school. Miss Massey, who grew up here, now teaches here in the elementary school. My next door neighbor, Renji and Heather, they're just a beautiful couple. He teaches math here. There's Ben Shaka and his family. Love this picture of Asher. It's definitely a reflection of his personality. He's a real fireball. Let me back up. Let me tell you a quick story about Ben. Ben graduated from Wheaton College. And by the way, I saw several Birmingham Southern grads here. Now, raise your hand if you're a Birmingham Southern person. It's good to see you in the audience. Nice. Graduated from Wheaton, had 2 job offers. Some of you may know his dad, Fran Shockey. He called his dad and he said, Briarwood Christian School has offered me a job, and Restoration Academy, the other great competitor, has offered him a job. And Fran just said, he kind of bit his lip and just said, I'm going to just pray, because he wanted Ben to make this decision. And by the way, Fran at that time was teaching at Briarwood. You can imagine the joy of teaching alongside your son. Of course, Ben chose Restoration Academy, and his dad said it was one of the proudest moments he ever had as a father. Briarwood's a great place, not to demean that, but just to see the expression of the compassionate heart of God lived out to his son. Just what an honor that was and is. Rosny Shepard and Lynn, Rosny's been here since the inception of the school. There's his son Jay, who's a 10th grader here, and just modeling family, teaching Bible, teaching PE. There's my family, it's wonderful just to see my wife Millie. She, her heart of just of compassion towards the children of this neighborhood. One of the realities that I noticed early on was the gross amount of neglect. Seeing 4- and 5-year-olds roam the street without supervision, shocking. And seeing my wife take them in and nurture and invite them to our table. Ministry on your doorstep. I don't have to go anywhere to find it. It's there. And just seeing that lived out through my wife. Steve Antonello and Bridget and their beautiful family. Steve taught at Phillips and Carver and reading specialists at those places. And we were so excited when he agreed to come on board. He's lived in the community for many, many years. Coach Coker, you met his son Chase, who's be heading to West Alabama, who bought a house in August right across the street from me, the oldest home in Fairfield, built in 1909. And I live across the street in the second oldest, built in 1911. Beautiful big houses with hardwood floors and high gas bills. So, wonderful to be there. And our 10th, which I didn't mention on the map, we hopefully will close. There is another faculty member who will close on a house on our street at the end of January. So that vision continues to grow. Being a presence in this community. I mean, tonight I'm meeting with some ministers, the mayor, the chief of police. We're talking about objectives of fighting crime in the area. So being a part of the overall revitalization effort, not just the school, but a part of the whole.